Now, the President-elect Bola Tinubu is preparing to come to the throne of power at a time of unprecedented political and economic turbulence in Nigeria. But perhaps more significantly, the warning bells are ringing well beyond the matter of the economy and politics. Those bells are ringing out over the deep divisions and incredible splinters that have cleaved this country into parts. There are the followers of Peter Obi and Atiku Abubakar and Rabiu Kwankwaso, all off on their own tangents. Then there are the supporters of Bola Tinubu himself. Then there are the ethnic, religious and regional cleavages. We've seen Mr. Tinubu to some extent define part of his purpose as being to unify. Well, coming on the heels of the divisions and the rupture that were sown before, during and after the elections which many believe were not free and fair, how will he unify Nigeria in a world in which everything is polarized and everybody is shouting at each other on social media? Can he be the man on a mission who will be capable of bringing everyone together? Will he prevail in bringing people into his orbit from across the yawning divide? Well, Nigerians will be watching to see what he brings to the table. And one man who has already made it clear that he is not on that table is the Labour Party's presidential candidate, Peter Obi.
I've never visited him. I didn't. These are one of the things I'm telling you. They've turned the whole thing into a joke. So what it is now is, what are we going to do to crush this person? What are we going to do to label him this? If it is not to label him tribal bigot, religious bigot, if it's not sticking, maybe we'll find his family, maybe have a love child somewhere, maybe all sorts of things. Duplicated identity, everything. Because I've been to the UK about 3 times this year, this issue. So it's all about, let's go to Washington and announce to them that is treason, that is involved in this, involved in that. Charles, I did not visit anybody.
Well, for his reaction to that Peter Obi interview that has set social media alight, and a lot more around the upcoming inauguration and Mr. Tinubu's plans for Nigeria, I'm joined now in the studio by the National Publicity Secretary of the APC, Felix Morka. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you
Lovely
so much.
to see you again.
Good to see you again.
I wonder how you react to Peter Obi's interview on this program yesterday. Are there parts of it or all of it that you'd like to respond to from the APC's point of view?
Well, if I had the opportunity, I'll respond to every part of that interview. Because to begin with, I think Mr. Obi thinks that this is all about him, but it's not. He thinks that people in the APC, and for that matter, in all of the nook and cranny of our political life, are all looking for him or looking about him to find something. That's not the case. People have moved on. For us in the APC, we had an election. The election has been long concluded. Campaigns are over. Political candidacy, candidacy for parties, it's long gone. It's closed. We've moved on. We have a president-elect who, hopefully, in a few days, will be inaugurated in accordance with our constitution. So I think that, Mr. B, personally, all of this period, I've hesitated really to really take issues with him directly. But I think that he's really crossing the line. Campaigns are over. He needs to just take a cheap pill and rest it. He has a case before the tribunal. He needs to allow his lawyers do their job now. Coming on the show to suggest that everybody in this country in APC are simply, even referred to his private life, people maybe going to look for some babies that he may have had. That's ridiculous. This is about the presidency of this country. This is serious matter. You know, Peter Obi has been way too sanctimonious, I think, for someone who really voluntarily got involved in the political process and offered himself to compete for presidency. What did you expect? It's, you know, a serious business. People say it's even a mucky business, but it is something of a serious business to produce the presidency of a country, any country. There's no country in the world where the competition for presidency is a walk in the park. It's heavy duty, you know, engagement. Sometimes even, you know, I mean, I don't want to use the words that were on TV, but people take this to the extreme sometimes. But I think that we've had this. Peter Obi did not win the election. The majority of people in this country voted either for the PDP or for the APC that won the election. Peter Obi came a distant third in the race. So this whole idea that he is the one who won the election that was taken from him, where does that come from? He didn't even come second. If he's claiming, you know, to be the next in line from a third position, that's absolutely ridiculous. So I think he needs to just rest it. And I think he's made a political capital of really exploiting people's vulnerabilities. He did that with the young people. Peter Obi is, by any, you know, stretch of calculation, an integral member of Nigeria's political elites. He's a part and parcel of the political establishment. This guy was governor for 8 years in Anambra State.
Well, that could well be why he knows the political establishment enough to want to reform it.
No, see, if by that criterion you suggest that he knows the political system, a man like Asiwaju, I'm sure, knows 1,000,000 times more than he does, because he comes from a longer distance to this conversation than Peter Obi, you know, does. So if anyone has any claim, it should actually be the likes of Asiwaju and the likes of Atiku Abubakar, not Peter Obi. But the point I'm making is that in 2019, this guy was the, you know, vice presidential candidate to Atiku Abubakar. Now, assuming Atiku won that election, in this election of this season, Peter Obi would have been running for re-election and might have been re-elected, you know, to serve. So when did all this, you know, sainthood actually become?
Right.
Well, the point I'm making is that in that interview, he also referred to the point he made. He made statements about how if he was elected president or if he has the opportunity, he will begin to tackle poverty from the north. The same thing he's done with our young people, he's also doing with the north. There's poverty in Anambra State. While, you know, acting as governor, he did not eradicate poverty in Anambra State. There is still, you know, gaping poverty in that state. That's his own state. Why the north? Does poverty have a tribal identity, have tribal marks? Why is the poverty in the north more important to him than the one perhaps even in his own backyard?
Well, to be fair to him, and I'm not their spokesperson, but he's not here, so we have to kind of reflect accurately what he said. The point he was looking at the percentages of poverty in Nigeria, and the highest percentage is in the north. That's why he used it as an example. No. And the second thing, that the point I wanted to make was that he was on the program mostly to try and dispel some of the rumors that were swirling around him and the allegations that were made about him. He was saying, because he's got followers, he has a responsibility to the people who follow him. That's why he said that he was not in fact arrested in England, that he was not, I mean, he clarified certain points, because one of Mr. Tinubu's aides, I mean, it's all over social media, and a member of the APC mocked Obi over his alleged arrest, that he was treated like a common criminal, and requested that the UK should come and tell us what, you know, the criminal things he had done. And so, I mean, in other words, and those were things that he felt affected the people who followed. Well, it didn't agitate him. He just felt...
Clearly he did.
In fact, it was very much an interview. And again, I'm not his spokesman or his defender, but he's not here to defend himself. And it was very much an interview that was for the consumption, that's the impression I had, of his supporters. And on a secondary level, perhaps, for his opponents, chiefly those in the APC. I mean, he was clearly trying to persuade his supporters that he was still the rock, as they call him, in spite of all the attempts by the APC to dislodge him. That's the impression that I got.
No, Charles, when you come on national television, you're speaking to everybody. There's no such audience that is selected.
No, I understand that.
Okay? No, I'm coming. There's no such audience where you say, he was speaking to his supporters. If you wanted to speak to his supporters, call a conference, go to a venue, invite your supporters and speak to them. When you come on national television, whatever you say is available to every Nigerian who is listening. You have a wide audience, for your television. So whatever he says here was meant for the consumption of everyone, including myself. And I listened to that interview. What I'm saying is that, why is it that anytime something is said about Peter Obi that is uncomplimentary, there's a need to come out to speak to his supporters to set the record straight?
Well, I would imagine that if things were said about your principle, you'd do the same thing.
Charles, let me finish my thought on this. Yes, I would do the same thing. But when things are said about, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the president-elect, for example, the same supporters of Peter Obi are the ones who make, a mountain out of nothing. For instance, during your interview, he said that, something about talking about the UK and his exit from the UK. He said it was in 2025. That was a slip. That was a normal thing that can happen to any one of us.
2005.
He said that. But if that was Asiwaju who said that, by now, this will be repeated a million times, even on this television station. All I'm saying is that we all make mistakes. But all I'm also the point I'm trying to make here is that Peter Obi has this penchant of really, appropriating other people's vulnerabilities for his own good. Everything you asked him about the crisis in the Labour Party, his own experiences, the things that people have said about him, some of the reports, that were not that complimentary, he banalized all of them. He minimalized everything. Listen, there's no crisis in the Labour Party. It's just these rascals who are coming into, Peter Obi is Peter the Perfect. Nothing about Peter Obi is ever, questionable. He's completely perfect. He alone understands Nigeria's problem. He alone knows the problem. Meanwhile, as a campaigner, for that position, Peter Obi did not offer one single policy, prescription to deal with all of these problems he says we have. What has he said? Even in manifesto, at a point, he said he didn't have to, even offer a manifesto because he's Peter Obi. Why would he offer a manifesto? Other candidates who have more experience were willing to lay down their thoughts and their ideas, their vision in documents. So people like you, experts can review and critique, but he would not do that. Look, all I'm saying is that it's not enough. Look at the example he gave. Peter Obi is an importer of goods and products into this country. He talks about containers coming in, with goods and, leaving the country empty. How many of those containers has he ever filled to export so he can generate revenue that he talks about? He said, look, we need to just stop. This is not something I want to come on TV to, be discussing. But the point is that when a man who competed for election, lost an election, has hired, brilliant lawyers and, given them the mandate to go to court, and they've gone to court, I think that some of these issues should be left the hell alone.
Right.
So that we can move on. Because whether Peter Obi likes it or not, Nigeria is bigger than him. Nigeria is bigger than even the president-elect. It's bigger than even the current president. But collectively as a nation, we must move on. And it's time to move on.
Well, let's move on. This behind. Let's move on in this interview. Because the next crucial phase for you as a party is the inauguration on May the 29th and the plans for this country after that. What are those plans in a nutshell? I mean, one of the big issues in Nigeria that nobody can deny is that the country is very divided at the moment. And the president, after he's sworn in, the president-elect becomes a president for all Nigerians. So what are his plans for unifying this country in a nutshell? I wonder if you might describe some of that for us and some of the other things you think are important to highlight.
You know, the president-elect is already on that question. He's been, from the day he was elected, his acceptance speech, all of the comments he's made, his remarks in, that are in the public domain, he's recognized that. He knows that he's becoming president at a time when this country has become intensely challenged with, coming together. Polarized, if you want to use that. Around, both the national questions and the issues of existential questions. He recognizes that. And I believe that, and from just being around him and listening to him, I'm convinced that he is coming to this with that sense of duty. He said that very clearly. He's going to be president for everybody, including Peter Obi. He's going to be president for you, for me, for all of us. And I think that Nigerians should just, hold their breath and give him that time of day to, get inaugurated and, take the authority of office. Yeah, but I think that in the initial optic, from his appointments, from the speed with which he's going to move to make those appointments and the quality of people and the diversity of, people he's going to bring to the table to, work with him to begin the business of governance, I think that he will leave no one in doubt that he's come to this with a sense of commitment and purpose.
Well, we'll have to wait and see the composition of the people who are going to work closely with him. Obviously, there's a constitutional requirement for there to be a spread in any case. Absolutely. But I'm wondering how he's going to successfully govern in a country that is so stricken by deep political, ethnic and religious divisions, and where there are fundamental questions of legitimacy dogging your man, who many believe did not win the election freely and fairly. I mean, that's a fact. And, there have been allegations suggesting that the APC, and obviously we're putting that to you, we're simply saying they're allegations, but they're there. Now, the APC has concluded plans to compel the tribunal judges to uphold the election of Mr. Tinubu as president. And I wonder what your reaction might be to that.
By what means?
I don't know. I mean,
no, Charles, look.
Well, let me tell you the means that they've mentioned. They've said that there are heavy financial inducements being proffered. It's been alleged that there is a plan if a judge decides not to accept the financial inducements to blackmail the judges by digging up dirt on them and threatening to use it to end their careers. I mean, and people have to wonder whether there's any truth to that. Just like Peter Obi came out yesterday to say there's no truth to the fact that, all the allegations made against me. I mean, it's a perfectly legitimate question to ask.
No, I'm not questioning your right to ask the questions or you have a duty to ask, I mean, if it's come to your knowledge. But the point is that it's just utterly ridiculous to suggest that our entire judicial system has been, so compromised to the point that the idea of justice in our country is no longer, attainable.
Well, when people believe that the election itself was fiddled and that INEC and the security agencies were compromised in a particular direction, I'm saying when people believe that, they also believe that the judiciary can also be compromised.
Those who believe...
And the history of that judiciary suggests that there have been elements within it that have been compromised.
Charles.
Yeah.
We had an election. The election was substantially free and fair. And an outcome was declared from that election. Listen, there's no election in this country. There's been no election held in the history of democracy that was concluded without controversy. Name one.
Yeah, but that is why it's in the domain of the judiciary, because questions are being raised about that election.
The point I'm making is
that's why people are worried about whether that judiciary has been compromised.
With respect to every election, Charles, there will be controversy. Every election anywhere in the world, there's hardly a country where elections are done and people just, wake up, dust up, and go to bed. You have people who question elections, irrespective. That is to be expected. That is normal. So you don't take what is normal, even in the best, advanced democracies, like the United States. The president of the United States today was elected amidst intense, polarization of that country and intense controversy. And the legitimacy of that election is still in question by those who decide that the election was in fact not free and fair, right? That's the United States. That's supposed to be the beacon of democracy. So the point I'm making is that when we have an election and somebody says, you know what, I don't believe the election was free and fair, what has that got to do with the legitimacy of the process? You can question it. I can question right now that you know what it is too.
Yeah, but it's not just an errant questioning. I mean, people are saying that they have, and we saw pictorial evidence
of what?
Of a lot of areas across Nigeria where the elections were disrupted by people, where things were interrupted.
Elections are required to be free and fair.
Yeah, they're supposed to be
substantially free and fair. If you are expecting a perfect election where there are no complaints, where there are no hitches or gaps or delays or complaints or problems, listen, go somewhere to Mars and conduct your own elections. But if you are on planet Earth and you conduct an election, this is to be expected. So all I'm saying is that the fact that someone or some people or even yourself decides that this election deserves to be questioned, or there's a reason to question the election, that does not in any way invalidate the outcome. You have a place where you can do that, where you can challenge the election and actually produce evidence. It's not enough to simply make allegations.
Which is what is going on at the moment.
That's what is going on. That's why we must also afford that system the time to go through the motion and the processes and actually come out. But a situation where you have gone to court and then the same you are saying, oh, these judges are unreliable, these judges are not trustworthy, these judges have zero integrity. When you do that,
I don't think they said
no. That's the net of everything you've said, that people believe, or some people believe. If that's what they believe, then you know what? I cannot help them. Take your case to God. Because on this planet Earth, there's only one place we are required to go. Our constitution, the ground norm, requires that if you do an election and you're not satisfied, take your case to the court. Now, if anyone decides that the courts are not good enough for them to go, like I said, there's the only other place you can go is go meet your maker and submit the case for divine adjudication. But for this moment, we as the party, we believe that we had an election. The outcome was not perfect, but was not so imperfect that anyone should adjudge it to be completely unreliable. Because nowhere in the world are elections perfect. So we're not in a world of our own. This is the reality of it.
I understand that.
That's what it is.
Are there any moral issues that you wrestle with when it comes to this election and the upcoming inauguration of May the 29th?
No, I don't. You see, let me tell you why I don't. When I say that, I think somebody will hear me and say, oh, how can you say you're saying that everything is fine? No. Everything about our country was not perfect, was not all rosy, from the day I was born. And I'm not, I think I have back to some age now. All my life, Nigeria has been, work in progress. Don't forget, just a few years ago, this country was governed back to back by soldiers. In 1999, we won this current, republic and a democracy now. It's work in progress. We've made progress. And I think that, I was a democracy campaigner. And so more than the average Nigerian, I was involved in that system. So when I see the country today, with all the imperfections, listen, it is a massive, leap in progress from where we were back then. So I'm saying that we need to just, take this in measure.
Right.
Because otherwise, look at Chimamanda. I hate to bring her up, but I have to. She lives in the United States with a president that was elected, in the midst of deep divisions and intense controversies. She writes to that president whose own legitimacy is, under the radar, under scrutiny.
Well, his
relentless
legitimacy
scrutiny
isn't, because
it is,
because of all there were 60 there were more than 60 lawsuits that were instituted by Donald Trump, and he lost every single one of them.
So
in those circumstances, yeah.
Charles,
In
but
those
isn't that my point?
circumstances, you can't.
Is it, now you
Yeah, but the
refer
case
to-
hasn't been decided in Nigeria.
That's
yet.
my point.
Right.
But you have submitted it. If everyone in the United States decided that the courts of that country were incapable of, delivering justice, you won't be referring to the outcomes, because by then maybe somebody might have truncated that entire
Well,
process.
in fairness,
we cannot truncate that. We must let
the
our courts
American
here also
judiciary
speak.
is not on the same level as
says
the
who?
Nigerian
Charles, who says
judiciary,
that?
because there's
No,
there's a lot of evidence to
I
suggest to
disagree.
the contrary.
I'm a lawyer. We had judges in this country who, under the military system, were profoundly.
We're talking about today.
I
We're
am
not talking
coming.
about then.
The same judges.
Yeah.
Some of the judges, may still be on the bench. Some of them may be, retired. But even the ones who are upcoming, you cannot now sit and say that, our entire judicial system is worthless. I refuse.
Nobody said it's
not just because I'm a
worthless.
lawyer, but I think that it's really unfair.
Nobody said
commentary.
it's worthless,
But that's what
this is an opportunity for that judiciary to redeem.
No, this
its
is what it
image.
appears to suggest, Charles, that our court system is manifestly unreliable and that they cannot be trusted to do justice. And I am saying that we must give our judges and our tribunals and our courts the opportunity to come out. So because after all said and done, what if, for instance, because when you go to court, this can swing anyway. I mean, after all this, very unfair, comments and suggestions, what if the courts came out in some way that completely, went against this trend of, condemnation of our judicial system? My point is that when a matter is in court, that's why lawyers say this is sub judice. Let it be. Stand back, stand fast. Let the judges decide. Worry about the quality of your evidence, because you can go to court with a nonsense, argument and expect to win. And when you don't win, you say, you know what, they were bought or justice was sold. We cannot build a democracy on this premise. We must at least, give that whole presumption of regularity, of competence, of integrity to our judges until they act otherwise, and then you have evidence to say this is the reason I believe they didn't do.
I promise you that presumption is there, which is why the cases are in court.
No, for me it's there, but I don't know about this public assessment that you're giving today.
Well,
I don't.
Felix, it's always a pleasure to have you here, and
Good to see you.
It's great to talk with you. Felix Morka is the National Publicity Secretary of the APC. Thank you very much.
Good to see you. Thank you.